As a freelance DP who is usually in charge of shoots that need to be run and gun, need to be fast-paced, and need to move really efficiently in a small scale, something that's always on my mind is efficiency. And for better or for worse, that's usually in relation to gear. Today I want to tell you why sometimes the highest end gear isn't always the best for every shoot. If we haven't met, my name is Colin. I'm a cinematographer based in the Midwest, and I want to tell you a story today about a recent shoot that I had that kind of opened my eyes and brought me back down to earth about, picking the gear for each shoot. So this job that I had was a pretty standard one. I had worked with this client before on this type of project before, and I was pretty sure how I was going to run it. The job was to capture a bunch of interviews throughout a day. We were going to be in a school, like a high school, so I knew that we needed to be lower key to not interrupt students too much or take away or detract their attention. And I also knew that we were going to be bouncing around to a bunch of different rooms, so mobility was going to be a huge factor. Now, the last job I did for this client, similar to this, was over a year ago, and at that time I didn't really have any kind of mobile workstation like I do now. I own the Adicam Max Plus production cart, and it's a fantastic piece of gear that really has made some projects possible when before they would have been a nightmare. The ability to load a bunch of gear up onto that cart is fantastic, and it really has been a workhorse for a lot of situations. And I figured that this would be the same case. I could load everything onto there and operate off of the cart. So I knew that the cart was going to be a big factor. Another thing I thought to myself was that it would be really helpful to not have to look for plug-in all the time for lighting. One of my favorite lights is the Aperture Storm 400X, and it's got V-mount plates on the ballast, and I've got a ton of V-mount batteries, so I figured that would be the best way to get my lighting done. I could throw the 400X on a rolling stand, roll it around myself, or have my producer roll it around for me, and I roll around the cart, and we're super mobile, and everything's fantastic. Another thought that I had about the job was that it'd be really helpful to have a second set of hands when it comes to equipment. The problem is that I just waited too long and ended up not having anyone available. I went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to hire someone. I would go, okay, yeah, it'd be really helpful. It's okay, I don't want to bother them, or I think I can handle it myself. And ended up being that no one was available and I had to do everything myself. For the most part, it wasn't terrible, but there were a lot of times where I was really wishing I would have had a second set of hands that would be able to help with equipment, as opposed to having the producer or one of the interviewees carry stuff for me. I obviously tried to make them not do that, but there were a few times where we were having to move quickly and I had to have someone else carry something for me because we just needed to move. The other thing that I completely ignored myself on was the plan with lighting. So I initially was going to go roller stand, V-mount batteries on the ballast with the 400X so that we'd have a fully mobile light that wasn't plugged into anything, didn't have to get picked up and moved, it could just roll. But I ended up changing my mind on that for a few reasons. First reason I changed my mind was that I had a delivery of the Aperture 700X, which I had pre-ordered as soon as it was announced. That light arrived a few days before the shoot, and the urge to try it out and take it on a job won over the portability and functionality of the 400X. So I decided against the small portable light to use the big shiny new light, and that ended up being something that I regretted. There was a lot of times where the ballast was bigger, the ballast was heavier, the light head was heavier, I had to use bigger light stands, and I also found this out, and I'm going to make a whole review video on the 700X, but one of its quirks is that it doesn't have battery mounts on the ballast, so you can't battery power that light. We had to find hard power. And so my whole plan for lighting that would have been mobile and efficient and not tied down to anything ended up being back to standard lighting scenarios where I've got a big heavy light stand and I have to look for hard power. The 700X was fantastic, but I ignored myself and didn't stick to my efficient plan that would have been better for the day. Now, once again, this wasn't a deal breaker for the day. We still made our day, we still got all our interviews done, and we did it in a relatively solid amount of time. But I definitely felt the sluggishness that I had caused by the gear I decided to bring. The final thing to mention is that I'm in a place right now where I'm constantly trying to elevate my cinematography and bring new ways in to shape light or place light in interesting places. And so I also ended up bringing a 2-foot Amaran tube and a giant negative fill rag and a diffusion rag and all these things with extra C-stands and extra light stands and all this gear that ended up taking a lot more time to set up. It did contribute to a better image overall, but it ended up making us a lot less efficient, which I think on this day was probably more important. The whole kind of main idea of this video is just to talk about how it's really important to approach every job from a unique perspective and think about what is going to be best for this job. And I started out doing that. I started out thinking, okay, how can we be mobile? How can we be efficient? How can we be non-distracting to people in a school environment? And what ended up happening was other ideas creeped into my head, and I slowly got attracted to, oh, the 700X is brand new and I need to take it out on a job so then I can do a review on it, and a whole bunch of other things that just contributed to a slower, less efficient workday, and it's because I picked the tools that weren't right for the job. Another random example that might apply to you, I know a lot of people are FX6 and FX3 owners combined, they own that kit together, and for the most part, the FX6 would be the A camera, but there are gonna be times, and I've constantly said this to people who I know shoot weddings, that I wouldn't recommend the FX6 for weddings. I'd recommend the FX3. It's probably gonna be better to have that small form factor, to run it on a gimbal, to be able to have the flexibility to quickly take it on and off of different rigging scenarios, and just the mobility and portability of that form factor is gonna be a lot better. Even though the FX6 might seem shiny and appealing and like the better camera because it's got the cinema build, that's not going to be the right tool for the job, and you have to pick the right tools for the job. Now again, not every gear choice is going to be life or death, and there are some pieces of gear that are going to make your days way more efficient, and there are some that are going to be marginally more efficient. But everything in filmmaking and in life has trade-offs, and it's important to take into account those trade-offs as you're making your choices for what you're going to use. If you've ever seen the efficiency triangle, I'm not sure if that's exactly what it's called, but it relates to how something can get done. It can get done well, it can get done fast, and it can get done cheap. And so the idea is that you can only ever have up to 2 of these points at a time. You can have something done well, and you can have it done fast, but it's probably going to cost a lot of money. You can have something done cheap and fast, but it's probably not going to be very good. And you can have something done cheap and good, but it's probably going to take a long time. And I think, again, that applies not just to filmmaking, but all of life. There's always trade-offs, there's always things you're sacrificing. And as the filmmaker, it's up to you to decide what that balance is going to be and where it's going to land. I wanted to share this story because it was a time I felt like I got in my own way as a filmmaker, and I caused myself problems, and I wanted to keep myself accountable and acknowledge the time where I made mistakes that cost myself problems. Like I said, it didn't really affect the shoot as a whole. We still got everything done. We captured everything we needed to, but I felt the weight of it because I was the sole person running all the equipment, and I was having to constantly load and set up and tear down tons more equipment than I wanted to on the day. And I was so sore and so tired at the end of the day that I was looking back at my former self and wishing that I would have brought different equipment. So I wanted to share this story just in case you're in a similar situation and you're thinking to yourself, man, I'd love to bring all the gear to put on the show of filmmaking and to make a big splash and to use all my new equipment and all, blah, 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 A, B, C. But take a second, step back and think to yourself, what's really best for this job? Is it the brand new 700X? It might not even be the 400X. It might be, hey, we're gonna bring a tube light because we need to be in and out in 3 hours and we don't have time to set up a softbox and light stands. We're gonna do 5-minute interviews and we're gonna set up, someone's just gonna hold a tube light and that'll be our key light. Or we're just gonna set up all our interviews by the window because we don't even have time to set up lights at all, or we don't have the ability to set up lights. Take some time and think to yourself, what's gonna be best for this job? And ultimately that doesn't come down to gear, that comes down to story and how the client is gonna feel about it. Once you take those things into account, then you make your decisions. And I think at the end of the day, you'll be a lot happier than you did if you would have made it based on the shiny new object. I hope you got something out of this video. My name's Colin. I'm sharing my filmmaking journey. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. I've got a lot more videos coming out soon, and I would love to see you there.